Jesus said to them, "For your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so." Now, stopping there for a second. Now, not only is it a cagey answer and a good one, because what he did was he took their support of their action from the law and defended himself from the law. See, it's all 5 books. We hear the word law and we think, oh, rules. Thank you, Magna Carta. That's not what the word in Hebrew means. The word in Hebrew means to hit the mark. It comes from that word atavah. So Torah means to hit a mark. The standard then is the law. This is what it is to be in relationship with God. This is the mark you're aiming at. When you break the law, you are chatovah. You have broken. Okay? You have missed the mark. So it's like an archer or a sharpshooter. Or if you're playing like SOCOM. Okay, there we go. That's how I get the guns. Okay? It's command and conquer. You get down that barrel sight. If you miss him, you only wing him. It's ha-tovah. Okay. When the Mercury capsule came down in the wrong spot, this is the 60s, but when the Mercury capsule landed in the wrong spot, the Hebrew newspapers literally put the headline as "The Mercury capsule sin." Because it was ha-tovah and missed its mark. Okay? But from the beginning it was not so. Well, now wait a minute. What's that comment, hardness of heart? Well, they did divorce their wives. What were they going to do with them? Most likely kill them. Or simply abandon them, which is effectively the same as kill them. Okay? So he turns to them and says, right, Moses knew that you're hard of heart. But in the beginning it was not so. And so, Jesus finishes by saying, "So I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for adultery," God bless you, "and marries another commits adultery. And he who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." Okay, so by the way, when people say, well, why is the Catholic Church so hung up about marriage and divorce? It's because Jesus is really hung up on it too. Okay? Just one of the little tip-offs. Why did the Catholic Church make sure we have processes like annulment? Well, because we're a little hung up on this issue about divorce because Jesus is hung up on it. Okay? But you would think that's the end of the story, right? You think, okay, the Pharisees don't get it, they're clueless, they go off. Story continues. The disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is not expedient to marry her." Who's now rejecting Jesus' teaching? His own disciples. Oops. See, we get the Pharisees. We get that. What we don't realize is that the disciples have to be converted on this point too. So what they're really saying is, well, heck, if I can't divorce the woman I married, then I might as well not get married. I mean, it's literally what they're saying. That's what they're getting at. Okay? So Jesus then grabs this by the hair and demonstrates something very fascinating. But he said to them, "Not all men can receive this precept, but only to those whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to receive this, let him receive it." Okay, quick vocabulary. A eunuch? Anybody? Okay, everyone's like, comfortable, yes, I am. Talking in chapel about these things, I understand. Okay. No, not just single. The word is castrate. Okay. Well, okay, here we go. Okay. Thank you, yes, good. Okay. Let me explain why. Because we have to think, remember, the culture they come out of ancient Near East. Guy has a husband. Guy is a husband. Sorry. That was an accidental fast forward. I hit the button, landed on Will and Grace. I apologize. Okay. Ancient world. It was not uncommon for especially men of power, wealth, and influence to not just have a wife or wives, but also to have concubines for various uses and purposes. Okay? So I'm going to do this nicely. Now, the problem was, though, that you needed people to guard the harem, okay, to guard the entrance to the harem. But, and this is the gross part, let's just be honest, if you're the king, you don't want your stuff being messed with. I'm sorry, ladies, ancient Near East, you were stuff, okay? You were possessions, okay? No different than having like Jay Leno having a house full of cars. That's how they treated their hair, okay? You were theirs. Well, in the ancient world, the only men who fought were men, obviously. But, obviously, men, again, from the beginning, have this thing for women. So there was only one way to make sure that the guy wouldn't break his promise not to touch the king's stuff. Yeah. Now, ironically enough, the eunuch was often a very highly, not prized position, certainly not prized, but was certainly a position that had huge honor attached, because you were very close to the king. Okay, so it was big perks. I mean, it was, So what's Jesus pointing to? He's saying, okay, well look, some people are born in such a condition that they can't have children. Okay, they're eunuchs by birth. And there are some people who are. Okay? And then he adds this third group. Well, there are some who are eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. This is the revolutionary statement. Because what he takes essentially is the disciples griping and whining. Well, we can't have it our way. He takes their griping and whining and says, if you only understood how much better this could be about to get. Because I'm going to make you fruitful without being married. I'm adding another layer to the self-gift. That it's possible to give oneself freely, but not enter into the bond of marriage for the sake of the kingdom. Here we go. This is where we arrive at one of the earliest teachings of the church about celibacy. So yes, once again, to be fair to history, but when people say that there was never celibacy in the church before it was made mandatory by those bad people in Rome in the 12th century, because it was the Dark Ages. So I'm trying to think of every horrible saw that you get in college, in a history department. It's already here. Jesus has already introduced to them this idea that celibacy is part of the plan now. And the big tip-off about celibacy is what? Jesus himself. Since he doesn't have a wife, despite what your friend of mine, Dan Brown, says. Alfred Nobel created the Nobel Prize to make up for the destruction that dynamite causes. I don't really think that Dan Brown should have to sponsor a few Catholic universities for the next, 50 years to undo the damage he's done through his literary crimes. Sorry, it's the dumbest book on the planet. As if it were bad enough that it's anti-Catholic. It's just bad writing. Okay, sorry, got off track. There are now two mutual goods here. That Jesus, by elevating marriage to a new level, has also added something else to the equation. He's added this notion that maybe from the beginning, the self-gift wasn't just marriage. That maybe there was something before the gift of marriage that was also a self. And that is the very gift of oneself completely. In reference not to one's own desires, but for the sake of the kingdom. Now, if you stop and think about that, and you now have got another step in the story. We figured out from Genesis that we are made to live in community. We're made to be self-gift. The next step is that we're also made to live out the self-gift in a dedicated fashion, something that's given over. This is why when we think about the sacraments of priesthood and marriage, oftentimes we associate these things with it. Because the ring is a pledge. And I don't have to wear, theoretically, technically, the only person who wears a ring in the church when you're a cleric is a bishop, a married deacon, or the pope.